All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. My name is Phil Curran. I'm the head of this ad hoc committee. People present are Councilman Tom Sadi, Councilman Joe Cavo, Corporation Counsel Les Pinter, head of the Health Department Scott Leroy, and Ed Sergi from the Still River Alliance. The purpose of the meeting is to look at the alliance and possibly write an ordinance or have an ordinance and establish a commission or authority. Les, I'm going to turn it over to you to kick it off.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to start with, this committee is meeting as a result of a request by council members to look at formation of an ordinance that would provide a formal setup as exists with many others, even making even more formal the Still River Alliance as a formal commission or other body of the city, provide more assistance, more protection of the law, more recognition. And that's off a previous meeting of the council at which the first step was taken, which is to adopt a resolution. I have copies of two things to circulate, if you don't mind, Chair. The one is the resolution which the council adopted a few months ago, and that resolution summarizes fairly well the status of the Still River Alliance at the present time as the council, through the council's adoption of the resolution a few months ago. There's a little bit of history in there. The second document that you have is a letter that went to you with the resolution. It's a letter from Nick Kaplanis, again giving a little bit of history of the Still River Alliance, so that you get a better backdrop of what the organization is all about. Basically, 1996 was its birth, and the purposes of the creation of Still River Greenway are in there. The organization was dormant for a little while, and then they were reformed, I think 2010. So if you do establish an ordinance, adopt an ordinance, the recommendation from our office would be that you try to adopt it in the form that exists with some other ones, that set up a purpose of the formal purpose defined of the Still River Commission, whatever you decide to name it. Purpose and duties, how the membership is done, how many members, would they be residents of the city or not, or it could be both, terms of office, and those kinds of standard conditions. And the Danbury Cultural Commission, for example, is one I pulled out that was created in, looks like 1967, some of them more recent than that. It sets up a very basic system of recognition and membership and how they're appointed. So tonight, what you would be looking at is whether the designation that the Alliance was given in the resolution is sufficient, or would you like to go to the next step, which is to recognize them as a formal commission with all of the membership formalities that would exist there.
Councilman Cavo.
Thank you, Mr. Curran. I appreciate it. When Councilman Sadi and I crafted the letter requesting the ad hoc, it was with our intention to, and Tom, if I speak, if I don't speak exactly, please let me know, but it was our intention to more formalize the process to offer the members of the Still River Authority further protections operating as an organization, much like a lot of our commissions do. And it was a request that came out of the council agenda that was recommended back in '96 that sort of formalizes this as a commission, and that's how we got to basically how we got to where we are today for this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilman.
Councilman Cavo is exactly right, and my understanding was that, and our understanding was that there was a concern that members of the Alliance, because of its somewhat, I won't say informal creation, but that it's not a formal authority or commission, even if members are acting in the scope of their duties, they could be subject to suit and potential liability and that the municipal insurance carrier would not necessarily either appoint someone to defend them or would cover any liability that they could potentially be found to have committed, whether justified or not, and that they'd have to fall back on their own personal homeowner's insurance or whatever policies they may have. So my question to the chair of the corporation council is, can you explain very briefly, is that accurate? Is that understanding accurate? And secondly, if it is, then establishing either an authority or a commission, or is there any other sort of hybrid that we can do in order to give them this liability and this insurance protection while being able to maintain consistency with what the purpose of the alliance is?
You took that first step with the chair by adopting the resolution which captured, in the event, let's say the carrier said, well, these guys are just a renegade group of people that have some very, very loose recognition, if you will, out there somewhere. By drawing them in through the resolution, by recognizing their existence and that they perform certain tasks, you would be drawing them under the umbrella of an agency or alliance, they're called. Alliance is not, it's not really typically used for our agencies. We're either boards or commissions, or agencies for that matter. Alliance is something a little looser, but by adopting that resolution, you're drawing them in and recognizing them formally. You're almost stating that the city now recognizes this group as a group that has duties in the performance of municipal functions for their purposes as defined. So that does help. As far as exposure for liability, yes, the insurance carrier would certainly decline to defend a claim. Now, we could overcome that claim by asserting a claim that this organization does indeed perform government-related functions, even though it's loose. We might prevail on that, we might not. It's not as good, not as strong as doing the protection level 1 or protection level 2, if you will. So that's one of the reasons why Ed and Jack Kozahowski, who's another member, came in and asked about that. Now, seeing Scott here and Nick Kaplanis, who wrote the letter, and this is the last answer to your question, Tom, is that because the alliance was formed under the auspices of that department before Scott's time, there is additional cover, if you will, based on that, because they had operated out of that department. And Nick Kaplanis, I think in his letter, indicates that he's willing to serve as the city's agent, or if you will, overseer of the alliance work. That helps as well, but it's not quite enough. The more you can get closer to a formal recognition, the more protection you have for claims, in my opinion. Now, the other side of the argument could be that, and I think we talked about this sort of in a half-joking way, all right, so you guys do whatever you want to do, the hell with you, well, whatever happens, you guys did it, we don't know anything about it, and we try to, distance ourselves. Well, that's not the way the city wants to do business. If somebody's doing business on behalf of the good of the city, then they should be under cover of so long as they're acting within the reasonable scope of their responsibilities and they haven't performed acts that are willful, wanton, or otherwise outlandish. So,
Les, can I just, wouldn't it be wiser for the city, though, to establish an authority or a commission on the grounds that, I talked to Ed about this in the hallway about a month ago. Now, it's fine that these guys, we have met on there 10 people right now that are willing to work on it. But supposing in 5 years, due to either death or illness, or just, I don't want to do it anymore. What happens when one goes down to 4, and then they start picking other people? Isn't it better that if the city has the control of, or the responsibility to appoint, to make sure that there's 10 people, or then when we have our meetings, to look at the government, are they meeting their quorum? Do they need more people on it to be appointed? Isn't it better from the city standpoint?
It's better, and you can almost look at this, Phil, as a, annually you do your government entity review. You can almost look at this as, well, let's look at what these folks do, see the importance of their work, and establish, a process where we know what they are, and who they are, and who's on there, and what the board does. You're right. Right now, it's whatever, we don't know who's doing what and when. And it was dormant, so nobody heard from them. this way you would have more, you'll have more jurisdiction as well.
I mean, I don't think we'd want to run it for them. I mean, they're,
No.
you know, but we don't run the other commissions either, but,
You mentioned authority, Phil, if I could address that, I hadn't thought about the authority. Obviously, you have authorities in the city, those are much more independent groups. They're statutorily formed, they have more expansive powers than a board or commission. So if you put authority to the side, that's a whole different animal. It's like the Richter Authority, you know, they have employees, they have their own insurance policies, things like that.
okay.
So this may, you know, just to make a distinction.
Councilman Sai?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was one of my other questions. What is the minimum entity, sort of the minimum structure we can have and still have this protection, which seems to be commission rather than authority? We don't want to go in that direction, I don't think. And just looking at the resolution, the other communications, there seems to be an outline, and Corporation Council alluded to, for example, the Cultural Commission and others that may provide us with, you know, strong guidance for creation of an ordinance. But if I may, through the chair, to both Mr. Leroy and Mr. Sergi, a question with regard to the need to have, or the desire to have people or electors from outside of Danbury serve. Is that something that's important to the Alliance? And if so, in the committee, we need to know that so the Corporation Council could draft an ordinance accordingly.
And if I can go first.
Please.
Historically, since Jack is not here, Jack Wojciechowski's been around for a long time, the active wells have depended on the work. When I was first started, we planted the greenways through Jack and state grants. You know, you say we don't want to run it for them, but a lot of things do need work done, applying for the grants, finance to do the accounting, purchasing, you know, all the rest of that. So we need that formal structure, but not through an act where we've just done it through the health department. You know, the work will get done. It's the protection we need. And the important thing to note is that I think it needs to be flexible as to who can be on it. Because an example would be the expansion of the greenway with the easements. If some of the owners of the large portions of land that we need to have easements through and maintenance of trailheads, and they say, well, I want to be on the commission in order to do that, so I have some input, and we say, well, you don't live in Danbury, you can't be. I don't think that would, it's not inviting to those who would own some of those responsibilities. I think we need to be open and inviting to anybody who might own property in Danbury and pay taxes and be able to be a part of the greenway expansion and long-term maintenance, not just Danbury residents, including experts, because a lot of those people down there have either a lot of knowledge or a lot of energy, because it's hard to find volunteers, and if you have somebody who's very skilled, you really want them applied if their knowledge is there. So if I
Yeah, no, that's actually very good points.
okay.
Yeah. From our standpoint, that we, before I got involved, there was an interest in making the thing very global. You know, not just Danbury. That, you know, the Alliance was reach out to other adjacent towns along the river. You know, Brookfield and Milford, and make the thing global. But that's not where the bulk of the members wanted to take it. They wanted to keep it focused to Danbury. And we built it. It was built with donations and effort from the city and from local towns. And we want to make sure that greenway that was created with so much effort, that's the cornerstone. We keep that looking great and attract people to it. And let's start there. With that said, you know, we've also said that if there are other groups in, say, Brookfield and Milford that form their own, in fact, I've seen Brookfield has plans for a greenway in the council room in Brookfield. If that was to happen, we would certainly work with them, you know, cooperatively. But right now, it's a Danbury-focused organization, and we're looking beyond just the existing 2.2 mile, or actually 1 mile trail in Commerce Park, to actually look at the Still River throughout as it crosses the whole city. We've done a couple of cleanups, and after that, I've been talking with Sean down in the unit about organizing more cleanups in other areas of the river that have become a problem for them. So, you know, we're working cooperatively with them to try to do that. So I would say, you know, we're primarily, if we can get more people from Danbury, you know, and a commission would be an avenue to do that. I think that has benefits in that
Yeah.
respect.
Yeah, if I can, if you go down to where the bridge is in Commerce Park, you'll see why there's interest among people who work down there and may not live in Danbury. It's because they go there. They go on lunch hour, they walk it, they run it, they jog the tracks. They enjoy it already because it's in their backyard, so to speak, because it's there when they're on lunchtime. So their jet level of interest is higher because they use it. And I say, you know, don't forget about them, but also don't forget about the guy who owns the property. Anyone had to say
Right.
about how it's maintained or used.
So
Councilman
if I
Cowell?
could just follow up on that, so if we were to decide that we wanted to make a recommendation to go with a commission, we would possibly do something where six members of the commission would be Danbury residents. There could be 3 at-large members that could come from, you know, somewhere that has to do with the attachment to the Greenway, whether it be New Milford, Brookfield, you know.
And there's no limit to the number of volunteers.
Right.
They can participate as a member of the alliance without being informed.
Well, we're talking just, I think, commission members.
Right, exactly.
That would be
Yeah.
appointed and then would serve a specified term. You know,
Yes.
whether they would just be all Danbury residents or whether we would make a mixture of primarily Danbury with, you know, a spot or a slot or a few slots open for at-large members, so to speak. Sean?
Councilman Singh?
I think Councilman Cabos hit the nail right on the head. Maybe a 6-3 split and figure out that the other 3 could be non-Danbury residents but have either a taxpayer or some sort of ownership connection to the Greenway of some kind. But that brings up something I think we as the council members or the committee members here may be looking at a little bit differently, and Mr. Sergi, you started to allude to a little bit. Anybody can volunteer and be a part of this. Well, if it's a commission,
Right.
they're not a member of the commission. And if they're volunteering, they're not shielded necessarily under the city's protection of liability, the sovereign immunity of some kind to some extent, and also under the insurance coverage. So it wouldn't be an entity, and in fact, by the resolution now, it's not an entity technically that anybody can just join. Looking at the last sentence here, it says, be it further resolved that the membership of the SRA shall be determined, designated, and appointed by the member. So even
The mayor.
technically
The mayor.
now,
The mayor.
by the mayor.
You said member.
by the mayor, not by the members, which So I just wanted, just to be clear, I think where we're going, and not speak for the other council members of the council as a whole, is that it would be a formal commission potentially, a 6-3 split with, as Corporation Council said, defined purpose, duties that can track these previous communications. We know what the purpose and duties generally should be. And a commission like that could have, you know, volunteer events and have people involved, but they wouldn't be members of the commission.
I understand.
If another entity wanted to be created, maybe a 501c3 Still River Alliance organization of some
Yes.
kind, that'd be very different. So I think that's where I'm going on this, and you'd have, you know, number of members, the set terms, and appointed by the mayor, confirmed by the council, just like any other commission. It seems to make sense. But that being said, Mr. Chairman, it would seem that we really can't vote per se on an ordinance right now. It'd be more to, I'm not saying we should do that, but continue the committee and ask for Corporation Council to bring something back to the committee to review and for yourselves, because you guys are the boots on the ground to take a look at. That would just be a suggestion.
Yeah, we don't want to draft an ordinance until we get a flavor of how you guys, but the other thing I want to the chair that mentioned Tom and Joe said that the letter from Nick Planis at the end indicates that there would be, that the Parks and Rec, or the Parks and Rec Department and the Health and Human Services would have membership on there, so I don't know if you want to, or if they want to include, or you want to include them as members of the 9 people. In other words, 1 or 2 would be the
Right.
Director of the Health and Human Services plus Director of the Parks
Yeah.
Department. You know, so that's up to you, but Nick asked for that.
Well,
They would automatically be on it.
I don't have the staff for that. We usually just act as staff, not as a member, because I think the membership, you know, like with other commissions that we work with, are pretty comfortable with that. I think Nick goes, and I'll tell you, I can't speak for Nick, but The work to get it to be a functional greenway was a lot, which is why it was in the health department and Jack. And I think there's a shift towards just maintenance right now, which would come under Nick and actually Antonio's group. So the maintenance issue would be big, and probably you get a lot of input from Nick's side, because it would be maintaining a park, not just creation of a park. It's two different ideas. So, you know, Jack and Hildebrand did a lot of work on the easements and getting it open and get the grants, but now it's maintenance, which is why Nick wants to be there. I don't know if he needs to be a member. I can't comment as to what Nick wants to do.
Could I ask,
I don't
how
care.
do you meet now? In other words, do you have monthly meetings?
We meet
quarterly
monthly
meetings?
at the Park and Rec office.
Okay.
Yep, Nick's provided us space.
Through the chairman to Mr. Pinter, in other commissions that the city has, is there a space on there for city officials, such as the director of parks or the public works director or his designee, to be, you know, an ex officio, sort of an ex officio member of the commission, or?
There are a few, there's a couple which have the mayor as a member,
Okay.
for the Main Street Partnership, I think. And, there are some
Okay.
that do designate. And as I say, I only bring it up because Mr. Kaplanis' letter at the end indicates a desire or a suggestion
Right.
that there could be representation. That's the only
Right,
reason. I'm not looking
absolutely.
to give Scott work, but that's what he says in his letter.
Well, again, just so maybe Ed can comment, I want to be clear that the maintenance of the trails falls upon the city. So maybe whoever does that should have more of a say than just say
So maybe,
us getting grants.
maybe you could put like the, you know, director of public works or his designee, and then let
Yeah.
Antonio or whoever the
Yeah, if
director
a
of
tree
public works
falls,
is, make the appointment to the Parks Department.
how are they going to get rid of it, right?
Right.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, that
Go
would,
ahead, sure.
if we're going in this direction of potentially a 9-member commission, that's just 1 seat out of 9. And what Councilman Calvo said is actually right. It's his, you know, Director of Public Works or his designee. So this way, we're not just, you know, pigeonholing somebody specific,
Right.
but giving them some flexibility.
Right.
Yeah, but like I said, the reason why Nick says he wants to go is
Mhm.
right, because they're telling him maintain the
Right.
park.
Mhm.
So.
Just a final word, to the chair, if I
Sure.
could, that like every other board and commission that you created over the years, just be mindful that, again, when you examine under your government entity review committee, the viability of these, they're around for 5 years, in a cycle. When you create one, you want to say that you see an ongoing purpose for what they do. In other words, if, let's say, the Store of Reliance has one project left, you may not want to formalize that, so you have to want to create it knowing that there's a multi-year permanent purpose in place for the group. So you don't even necessarily have to state that, but you want to know that that's what you see, okay? And I'm only saying that because to create an ordinance and a formal commission, you know, there's work to do after that. You know, the mayor has to figure out appointments, you gotta look for people, you gotta actually have things to do and track it. You know, they report to you and you're gonna ask questions, you're gonna say to Ed or whoever, hey, what'd you guys do, what do you got planned, and you wanna hear something. So,
Okay, and to that, Mr. Pinner, just pitfalls to creating a commission. I know you just touched on, and I don't necessarily consider what you just mentioned a pitfall, but are there any pitfalls to us creating a commission?
yeah. Increased liability, number one. Number two is inadequate membership, you can't find enough members. A bona fide public purpose. If, for example, a group has purposes that benefit other municipalities instead of Danbury more, well, that doesn't really serve Danbury unless it flows back, excuse the pun, flows back to Danbury. You know. And again, the administrative oversights that won't necessarily exist by somebody in the administrative group. You know, somebody, you're gonna, like Ed, let's say as the chairman, you're gonna have to come back to somebody and say, here's what we're doing. To Kaplanis, for example. Nick's gonna have to spend time, make records and all that, and come here to say, here's what's going on. So it's administrative burden. So those are the, if you will, the negatives.
Yeah, if I might, we're kind of already doing.
You're kind of already doing that now, right?
Just to follow up on that one thing on the record, because I think where we're going here is to continue the meeting and get something more formally drafted. But
Yeah.
Ed, I don't know if you have a meeting between now, you know, over the next several weeks, But another thing, again, not a pitfall, but as Councilman Cabo said, he's absolutely right. What other implications are there? All the FOIA compliance requirements. Now, you say you're noticing things now and probably compliant with FOIA, but being a formal commission, there's going to be a little, I don't want to say strict scrutiny, but a little more scrutiny on that.
Certainly, yeah.
Noticing meetings properly, minutes being filed according to state statute, all those things. And people understanding that now it's in a, an
Right.
ordinance, established body.
No, we recognize that. yeah.
That's a very good point. That's more administrative burden, if you will. And I think you can even adopt, I mean, some of these agencies and boards have bylaws, so
We should,
it's another.
yeah. I don't think we currently don't, but that would certainly be necessary.
Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'd like to make a motion that we ask the Corporation Council to formally draft a ordinance that would form a creation of Still River Alliance Commission for review by both the Still River Alliance and this ad hoc, with hopefully the purpose of moving forward to creating the Still River Alliance Commission.
Second.
Second, okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered.
And return to the call to the chair also, I'm sorry. I'll make a motion that we continue this meeting to the call of the chair for when that Corporation Council has that draft and everyone has a chance to look at it.
Okay.
Continue this.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Open for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Thank you for your time.